It's about time we talk about how the Brian Braddock tease in Avengers Endgame could introduce Psylocke into the MCU and set up the Captain Britain Corps for the X-Men's arrival. There's even potential for a Psylocke solo movie. Plus, the MCU's casting choices for mutants could fix a missed opportunity from the Fox X-Men franchise. So let's dive into what we know about a possible Psylocke movie and more. For those who don't know about the Brian Braddock tease in Avengers Endgame, here's the scoop. During the scene where Steve Rogers and Tony Stark go back to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Camp Lehigh in 1970, Steve overhears Peggy Carter saying Braddock hasn't checked in recently. This could be a nod to Brian Braddock, aka Captain Britain, existing in the MCU. In the comics, Braddock becomes Captain Britain after a bad motorcycle accident, so maybe that's why he's not checking in. Peggy might have been talking about Brian's dad, Sir James Braddock, who helped start the Captain Britain Corps, but either way it hints at Brian's arrival as Captain Britain. Phase 4's What If gave us Peggy as Captain Carter. She even showed up in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, but she wasn't called Captain Britain. So there's still room for Brian Braddock to debut in the MCU's multiverse saga, especially with that Endgame tease setting it up. That said, now let's dive into the main point. How can the Captain Britain Corps set up the MCU's X-Men, and is there even a chance for a Psylocke solo movie? Well, to answer that, we can start with Brian Braddock, the OG Captain Britain in Marvel's 616 universe. His twin sister Betsy eventually took over the role after Brian was defeated by an alternate version of Captain Britain. Betsy's time as Captain Britain was short-lived, though. It ended when she was blinded by the villain Slaymaster. But that wasn't the end for her as a hero, since Betsy was born a mutant. After Brian reclaimed the Captain Britain title, Betsy went on to join the X-Men and took on the identity of Psylocke, using her telepathy and psychic weapons. Psylocke has already been portrayed by Mei-Ling Melanson and Olivia Munn in X-Men The Last Stand and X-Men Apocalypse, but bringing her into the MCU alongside Captain Britain could be the perfect move. Betsy's Captain Britain arc in the comics is pretty brief, which would make for a great introduction in the MCU, setting up the Captain Britain Corps and planting the seeds for the X-Men's arrival in the multiverse saga. Plus, it's a chance to finally give Psylocke the justice she deserves, since both of her previous versions in Fox's X-Men franchise didn't exactly wow fans. This could lead to some serious potential for a Psylocke solo movie. Or, Psylocke could first show up in a Captain Britain movie, which would be a great way to introduce her before diving into a solo film. Teaming up with her brother Brian Braddock in his debut would make sense, especially since their stories are so connected in the comics. This would not only set up their sibling dynamic, but also give fans a proper introduction to the Captain Britain Corps and Betsy's role as a mutant. From there, a Psylocke solo movie could be on the table, exploring her mutant abilities, her history with the X-Men, and her evolution as a hero. Starting her off in a Captain Britain movie would give her character depth and establish her in the MCU before leading into her own adventures, where we could finally see her fully shine as Psylocke, doing justice to the character in a way the Fox films didn't. It's all about laying that foundation before going big with her own storyline. There's really no better place to bring in the Captain Britain Corps than the MCU's multiverse saga, especially since the Corps is all about protecting the multiverse. With Deadpool and Wolverine, fans have already gotten a glimpse of how the Corps might fit into the MCU. Plus, rumors have been swirling about Henry Cavill possibly playing Brian Braddock after his exit from the DC Universe, despite him already taking on the role of Wolverine in Deadpool and Wolverine. But hey, the MCU loves giving actors multiple roles. Just look at the buzz around RDJ potentially playing Doctor Doom after his iconic run as Iron Man. If the Captain Britain Corps does make its debut, the key member to keep an eye on is Betsy Braddock, aka Psylocke. While she's not currently part of the Corps, she was a former member in the comics, and she could easily come back into play. With so many upcoming projects in Phases 5 and 6, we could definitely see the Captain Britain Corps pop up soon, maybe even getting their own project in one of those empty Phase 6 slots. There's even a chance Olivia Colman's role in Secret Invasion could tie into Captain Britain, given how big the British storyline was in the comics version of Secret Invasion. And with Captain America Brave New World on the horizon, we might get a hint at Captain Britain alongside the MCU's new Cap, potentially leading into Thunderbolts. It seems more likely, though, that Brian Braddock's official debut as Captain Britain will happen during Phase 6, setting the stage for a crossover with the Avengers at the end of the multiverse saga. One of the most talked about casting choices for Psylocke lately is Anna Sawai, and a lot of people think she'd be a great fit for Kwanon's version of the character instead of the original Betsy Braddock. Both Anna and Kwanon share Japanese roots, and Sawai has been showcasing her acting skills in some dramatic roles in projects like Monarch: Legacy of Monsters and Shogun, where she's received plenty of praise. It would be awesome to see her step into the MCU as this lesser-known hero. Since Anna Sawai is still relatively new to the acting scene, she fits perfectly into Marvel Studios' trend of taking fresh faces and turning them into household names. If she does get cast as Kwanon's Psylocke, we could see a brand new version of the character on screen, one that hasn't been explored before. This could be an amazing way to reinvent the character after her less than stellar portrayals in Fox's X-Men franchise, giving her the attention and development she deserves. Previous adaptations of Psylocke have focused on Betsy Braddock, but Kwanon has never made it to live action. For nearly 30 years, Betsy and Kwanon were actually body-swapped due to the interference of the Hand, a ninja group that Kwanon originally worked for as a deadly assassin. They got their bodies back in 2018, with Betsy becoming Captain Britain and Kwanon stepping up as the new Psylocke. The Hand played a significant role in Netflix's Defender saga, which is now confirmed to be part of the MCU canon, making it easy to establish Kwanon's connection to them. After the body swap, Kwanon finds herself somewhat of an outcast and teams up with other misfit mutants to form groups like the Fallen Angels and the Hellions. Eventually, she saves Betsy's soul from another reality and returns her to her body, ending their rivalry and solidifying herself as a true hero. It would be fantastic to see Kwanon make her debut as Psylocke in the MCU, especially since reinventing her character might just be the best way to make up for the past mistakes of Fox's adaptations. An alternate version of Psylocke also pops up in 2024's Deadpool and Wolverine, played by an uncredited Aisha Hussein, but unfortunately, she meets her end during the Resistance team's fight against Cassandra Nova's forces. 20th Century Fox never really nailed Betsy Braddock's Psylocke in the X-Men franchise. She first appeared in 2006's X-Men: The Last Stand, portrayed by Mei Ling Melanson, but had a pretty minor role as a member of Magneto's Brotherhood of Mutants. Her powers and personality were also significantly altered from the comics. Instead of her iconic ability to create weapons from psychic energy and use telekinesis and telepathy, Mei Ling's Psylocke could teleport through shadows, which didn't really add much to the story, giving her the depth and nuance that previous adaptations failed to deliver. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.